Om Gyanam Timirandasya Gyanajana Shalakya Chakshunantamana Tasmi Shri Guru Shri Chaitanya Manavustam Sthapitam Bhutale Sarvabhaum Gadamayan Dadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapatakanam Shri Guru Vaishnavamcha Shri Guru Sagaragatam Sahagam Raghunathavadantam Sajivam Sadhuitam Savadutam Paridana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagam Shiv Shakavatam Cha Mom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasadesha Tarine He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gope Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Shade Vrindavaneshwari Vishwanusute Devi Pranava Vihari Priya Vancha Kalpataru Besa Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Aditana Pavane Vaishnavi Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada की जय. Yes, नवीन प्रभु जी आप assign कर दीजिए प्रभु जी, please.
Okay, ठीक है. तो Professor Kotosviki, let me see who all in. ठीक है. Anushka Mataji can be Professor Kotosviki, and Kanak Mataji can be Prabhupada. And then after that, you and Ishu Prabhu can go, okay, and then I can join. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. But at the same time, it seems to me that surrender is to be accompanied by revolt. The history of mankind has proved that mankind has developed only by revolt against some kind of surrender. In the medieval age, there was a French Revolution. It was revolt as against surrender. But this revolution itself was surrender to the rank and file of the people. You are agreed?
Yes.
So it is not enough to come to a full stop. Surrender is to be accompanied with revolt against some and surrender to some people.
But the surrender will be fully stopped when it is surrendered to Krishna. That is full stop, no more surrender. Any other surrender you have to change by revelation, but when you come to Krishna, then it is sufficient. You are satisfied. I will give you an example. A child is crying and people move him from one lap to another. Oh, he does not stop, but as soon as the baby comes to the lap of his mother,
it stops.
Yes, full satisfaction. So the surrender, these changes will go on in different categories. But the sum total of all this surrender is surrender to Maya. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that this surrender, neglecting Krishna, is all Maya. Either you surrender to this or that, but final surrender is surrender to Krishna. Then you will be happy. The process of surrender is there, but surrender to Krishna keeps one quite satisfied transcendently.
Haven't you come across hostile attitudes to your teachings from Orthodox Hindus or Brahmanas in India?
We have subdued them. Any Orthodox Hindu may come and challenge, but we have our weapons, the Vedic literature, so no one has come. Even Christian priests in America love me. They say these boys are American, Christian, Jewish, and now they are so much after God. But we could not deliver them. They are admitting it. Their fathers and their parents come to me, offer their obeisances and say, Swamiji, it is our great fortune that you have come here to teach God consciousness. So on the contrary, I have been well received. In India also, since you inquired of India, all other sects are admitting that before me, many kinds of swamis went to the Western countries, but they could not convert even a single person to Krishna consciousness. They are admitting that. As far as I am concerned, I do not take any credit, but I am confident that because I am presenting the Vedic knowledge as it is, without adulteration, it is being effective. That is my confidence. If you have the right medicine and you administer it to a patient, you must be sure that he will be cured.
How many out of your 1,000 disciples do you have in India itself? How many of your community do you have in India?
In India,
Yes.
In India, there are many Krishna conscious persons, hundreds, thousands, millions. In India, there is no Christian. There is not a single Hindu who is not Krishna conscious.
Yes, I understand.
Vaishnavas. This is called the Vaishnav cult. You have been in India, so it is as it is commonly known. There are many millions of Vaishnavas. For example, this gentleman, an Indian gentleman present, is the commander of Air India Airlines. He is not my disciple, but he is a Vaishnav, Krishna conscious. Similarly, in India, there are millions of Krishna conscious persons. There are even Mohammedans who are Krishna conscious. At Gorakhpur University, there is Mohammedan professor who is a great devotee of Lord Krishna. So this is natural. It is said in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishna consciousness is everywhere, in everyone's heart. It simply has to be awakened by this process. That is all. It is there in your heart also. It is not that it is foreign to you. In everyone's heart, there is Krishna consciousness. By this process, we have to awaken it. It is just like the way the sun rises. It is not that all of a sudden the sun comes from nowhere. It is there, but it rises in the morning. Similarly, this Krishna consciousness is everywhere, but some way or another, it is now covered. By this process, it is reawakened and aroused by association.
You came yesterday to Moscow. Have you seen same thing here in Moscow?
No, I'm not very much interested in sightseeing.
But in any case, just to stay in an old style hotel is not interesting, not many people to see. And you are leaving the day after tomorrow.
That is my program.
You are leaving for the United States or for Europe?
Yes, for Europe, Paris. And we have two very big ceremonies in London and San Francisco. They are making arrangements for the Rath Yatra car festival. This car festival is observed in Jagannath Puri. You have been to Jagannath Puri?
Yes, the car festival has been held from immemorial times, a very old tradition, huge cars.
Yes, and it has now been introduced in the Western countries in London and San Francisco. And gradually, maybe we will introduce it in other countries also.
In London, there is a large Indian community.
No, this is organized by the Englishmen and Americans. The Indian communities in London and San Francisco are trying to become, you know the word, Sahib.
Westernized. A very great social anthropologist at the university has written something very interesting. He says there are two processes: the process of westernization among Brahmanas, mainly the upper class, and the process called Sanskritization, which is the process of adopting Brahman rituals, etc., by so-called lower classes, even untouchables. It is very interesting. It is a very interesting process in India just now, but India's position, unfortunately, is problematic.
The difficulty is that India is nowhere. They are trying to imitate Western life, but from a materialistic or technical point of view, they are 100 years back.
Yes, that is right. But what to do for India?
There is one thing I'm experiencing. If India's spirituality is disturbed, that will increase India's honor because everywhere I go, people still adore Indian culture. If this treasure house of India's spiritual knowledge is properly distributed, at least people outside of India will understand that they are getting something from India.
Of course, you are right. The Indian cultural heritage is to be made known everywhere. But at the same time, in what way would this benefit the Indian masses themselves? They are sitting in India and they have nothing to gain from the spreading of the Indian cultural heritage all over the world. Indian villages have to have fertilizers, tractors, etc.
Yes, we do not object to that.
I think, Prabhuji, we can now you and issue can take the role. But before that, any comments or questions or any reflections so far, whatever we compared?
Yes, Prabhuji, I want to add one point. जैसे अभी देख रहे हैं ना, प्रभुपाद एक्सप्लेन कर रहे हैं, तो एडिफिकेशन बहुत अच्छा करते हैं प्रभुपाद कृष्णा कॉन्शियसनेस का. जैसे हम देखेंगे कि वो जो मतलब एट पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पे किसी पर्सनैलिटी को यूज करते हैं. अब जैसे उन्होंने डायरेक्ट बोला कि ये एयरलाइंस के कोई हेड आए हुए थे, उन्होंने एक मतलब हाईलाइट दे दिया. उसके बाद फिर इंडिया के ऊपर बात आई तो उन्होंने डायरेक्टली यही बोल दिया खत्म कि होल इंडिया इज कृष्णा कॉन्शियस, है ना. तो मतलब इसका मतलब है कि अगर आप फॉरेन में हो तो इम्पैक्ट ज्यादा है कि भाई जो मतलब पॉपुलैरिटी है, फैन फॉलोइंग है, वो तो भाई मास स्केल पे है भगवान मतलब कृष्णा की, तो उसमें कोई डाउट नहीं है. और उसमें फिर एक और एक्सट्रीम भी चले गए कि एक गोरखपुर यूनिवर्सिटी में मुस्लिम है और वो भी कृष्णा कॉन्शियसनेस है, कृष्णा कॉन्शियस मतलब ही इज आल्सो कृष्णा कॉन्शियस. तो मेरे को लगता है कि वो मतलब कहीं बिल्कुल रूट में जाके ना अटैक करते हैं प्रभुपाद, और छोड़ते ही नहीं है कहीं से कहीं तक कि मतलब सामने वाला कन्विंस हो ही जाए. तो मतलब मुझे एक वो पॉइंट बहुत अच्छा लगा.
And in all the discussions so far we have read, मुझे कहीं पर भी ऐसा नहीं लगा कि एक फाइटिंग हो रही है, आर्ग्यूमेंट हो रहा है, and everybody is convinced at the end. Everybody.
Yes, yes.
प्रभुपाद के बात करके ultimately they all come to the agreement.
Yes, yes, Prabhuji, yes. No doubt.
So
वो डाउट का स्कोप ही नहीं
that's an
छोड़ते.
art.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, Prabhuji, you can become professor, or you should get Srila
Yes,
Prabhupada.
yes, yes, Prabhuji. Yes, you should do.
Yes, we do not object to that.
Yes, I don't think you can object, but at the same time, something has to be done in India. One may call it westernization, but this introduction to an industrial technological revolution is needed in all fields of Indian life, agriculture, industry, etc.
Arjun, before understanding the Bhagavad Gita, was a fighter. And after understanding the Bhagavad Gita, he remained a fighter. So we don't want to change the position. For example, you are a respectable professor, a teacher. We don't say that you must change your position. We have come to convince you about your philosophy. That is all. Arjun was refusing to fight. Krishna, I don't want to kill all my relatives. I do not want this kingdom. But he was taught the Bhagavad Gita. At the end, when Krishna inquired, what is your decision now? He said, Krishna Vacham Tava. Yes, I shall act as you say. Bhagavad Gita 18.72. That means that his consciousness changed. He was a fighter and he remained a fighter. But he changed his consciousness. We want that. We don't want to disturb the present condition of society. We are not against the teaching technology. No, but we try to make one understand this Krishna consciousness. That is our program.
Of course, at the same time, the final goal of any consciousness is to change the society, to make it a better society.
That is automatic.
I'm not really so happy that the ultimate goal is not to disturb society, because in modern society, there are many things to be changed through consciousness.
That preliminary change is to follow rules and regulation of austerity. For example, don't take intoxicants.
No indulging in intoxicants, simplicity, etc.
So if one takes to this process,
Then the others will come automatically.
one's whole life will change because these four things illicit sex life, intoxicants, meat eating, and gambling are very great impediments to social improvements.
It will automatically make life simpler, because a person who does not indulge in illicit sex, intoxicant, and such other things has to lead a comparatively simple life.
The other day I was speaking in Mumbai with respectable gentleman. I was telling him Krishna says, Mami Partha. प्रभु जी आप एक बार ये पढ़ देंगे, मैं गलत ना पढ़ूं शायद.
Okay, Prabhuji, मैं try कर सकता हूँ. Mam hi partha, yes. Naveen Prabhuji.
Okay, नहीं आप ट्राई करिए ना प्रभु जी.
माम ही पार्था व्यापसृत्या ये पी स्यु पाप योनयः स्त्रियो वैश्यास्त तथा शूद्रास ते पी यान्ति परम गतिम.
Even those who were low born, Papa Yogana, Stri Vaishya Sudra, are also included by accepting me. By, by accepting me, shelter, they are also elevated to the transcendental position. Bhagavad Gita 9.32. Now, why have the higher classes of Hindu society neglected these injunctions of the Bhagavad Gita? Suppose one is Papa Yonaha, low born. Krishna says that he can be elevated to the transcendental position if he accepts me. Why wasn't this message propagated by the higher class of people so that the so-called low born could be elevated? Why did they reject them? The result was that instead of accepting the Mohammedans, the Indian rejected them, and now they are partitioned off. Partitioned off. They have become eternal enemies of Indians. So far, the first time we are trying to elevate person to the higher position of Krishna consciousness, even if one is low born, because the soul is pure. In the Vedas, it is said that the soul is untouched by any material contamination. It is simply temporarily covered. This covering should be removed. Then one become pure. That is the mission of human life: to uncover ourselves from this material environment, come to spiritual understanding, and surrender to Krishna. Then life is perfect. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
To the next. Okay. Again, a conversation. Yes, Prabhuji.
तो प्रभु जी मैं डॉक्टर सिंह बन जाता हूँ, आप प्रभुपाद का रोल प्ले कर लीजिए. And then we can go
Prabhuji,
back.
exchange कर लेते हैं Prabhuji.
अच्छा ठीक है प्रभु जी. You can start प्रभु जी. Yeah.
Okay, Prabhuji. The tiny world of modern science. During a morning walk in April of 1973 at Venice Beach, Los Angeles, Srila Prabhupada discusses modern science and its high priests. They claim to have millions of dollars worth of knowledge, but if you ask them a question, they simply give you a post-dated check. Why should we accept it? They cannot even produce a spear of grass through their biological or chemical experiments. Nonetheless, they are claiming that the creation is produced by some chemical or biological method. Why does no one caution all this nonsense?
The whole world of science and technology is running on the false idea that life is born from matter. We cannot allow this nonsensical theory to go unchallenged. Life does not come from matter. Matter is generated from life. This is not theory, it is a fact. Science is based on an incorrect theory. Therefore, all its calculations and conclusions are wrong. And people are suffering from because of this. When all these mistaken modern scientific theories are corrected, people will become happy. So we must challenge the scientists and defeat them. Otherwise, they will mislead the entire society. Matter changes in 6 phases: birth, growth, maintenance, production of byproducts, dwindling, and death. But the life within matter, the spirit soul, is eternal. It goes through no such changes. Life appears to be developing and decaying, but actually it is simply passing through each of these 6 phases until the material body can no longer be maintained. Then the old body dies and the soul enters a new body. When our clothing is old and worn, we change it. Similarly, one day our bodies become old and useless and we pass on to a new body. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 2:13, Dahino asmin ita dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tatha dehandra prapti. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. And a little later, 2:18, Antavanta ime deha nityakshok sharinaha. Nityashokta sharinaha. This means that only the material body of the indestructible and eternal entity is subject to destruction. This material body is perishable, but the life within the body is nitya, eternal. हरे प्रभु जी आप पढ़ लीजिए.
According to the Vedas, the measurement of the soul within the body is 1,000 part of the tip of a hair. This is very small. In fact, it is atomic. Yet, because of that atomic spiritual energy, my body is working Is it so difficult to understand? Suppose a man think himself very stout and strong. Why is he stout and strong? Only because within his body is a small spiritual spark. But as soon as the spiritual spark is gone, his body dies and his strength and vigor become void. If scientists say that matter is the cause and origin of life, then let them bring just one dead man back to life by injecting him with chemicals. But this they cannot do. Dr. Singh, since scientists cannot see. Yes, Prabhuji.
मैं कंटिन्यू करूं?
Sure, Prabhuji, sure.
Since scientists cannot see the spirit soul, they say its existence is very doubtful.
नवीन Prabhuji, आप कंटिन्यू करेंगे Prabhuji?
नहीं प्रभु जी आप ही कर लीजिए प्लीज.
Okay. How can they see it? It is too small to see. Where is such seeing power?
Still, they want to sense it by some means.
If you inject just one grain of deadly poison into someone, he immediately dies. No one can see the poison or how it acts, but the poison is acting nevertheless. In the same way, the Vedas say that because a minute particle called the soul is within the body, the whole body is working nicely. If I pinch myself, I immediately feel it because I am conscious all over my skin, all over my skin. But as soon as the soul is absent, which is the case when my body dies, you can take this same skin and cut it and chop it, and no one will protest. Why is this simple thing so hard to understand? Is this not detecting spirit?
That is the soul. But what about God?
First of all, let us understand the soul. The soul is a small God. If you understand the sample, then you can understand the whole. Now here is matter. Srila Prabhupada points at a dead tree with his cane. Formerly, leaves and twigs were growing from this tree. Why are they not growing now? Can the scientists answer this question?
They would say the chemical composition has changed.
All right, then if they're so advanced in knowledge of chemistry, they must supply the proper chemicals to make branches and leaves grow again.
Knowledge means that one must be able to demonstrate his theory. They should be able to show in their laboratories that life is caused by a combination of chemicals.
Yes, the scientific method means first observation, then hypothesis, and then demonstration. But these scientists cannot demonstrate their hypothesis. They simply observe and then speak nonsense. Scientists say that chemicals are the cause of life, but all the chemicals that were there when the tree was living are still present, and life energy is also there. There are thousands of microbes in the tree, and they are all living entities. No one claimed that life energy is lacking in the body of this tree.
But what about the life energy of the tree itself?
Yes, that is a difference. The living force is individual, and the particular individual living entity, which was a tree, has left. This must be the case, since all the chemicals that are necessary to support life are still there, yet the tree is dead. Here is another example. Suppose I'm living in an apartment and then I leave it. I'm gone, but many other living entities remain there, and spider and so forth. It is not true that simply because I have left the apartment, it can no longer accommodate life. Other living entities are still living there. It is simply that I, an individual living being, have left. The chemicals in the tree are like the apartment. They are simply the environment for the individual living force, the soul, to act through. Thus, the scientists will never be able to produce life in the chemical laboratory. The so-called scientists say life begins from chemicals, but the real question is, where have the chemicals come from? The chemicals come from life, and this means that life has mystic power. For example, an orange tree contains many oranges, and each orange contains chemicals, citric acid and others. So where have these chemicals come from? Obviously, they have come from the life within the tree. the scientists are missing the origin of the chemicals. They have started the investigation from the chemicals, but they cannot identify the origin of the chemicals. Chemicals come from the supreme life, God. Just as a living body of a man produces many chemicals, the supreme life, the supreme Lord is producing all the chemicals found in the atmosphere, in the water, in the humans, in animals, and in the earth. And that is called mystic power. Unless the mystic power of the Supreme Lord is accepted, there is no solution to the problem of the origin of life.
Okay, Prabhuji, before we go further, any questions or reflections or? All right, so no questions. Everybody is good.
Last
Anybody
question
is? हाँ बोलो.
वो जो लास्ट वाले जो कॉन्वर्सेशन हो रही थी उसमें वो जो प्रभुपाद जो लास्ट पैराग्राफ में बता रहे थे, इवन द लो बॉर्न शूद्रा एंड कैन बी अटेन दैट लेवल ऑफ कृष्णा कॉन्शियसनेस बाय नोइंग मी. तो उस केस में प्रभुपाद वो मॉमडन्स का भी एग्जांपल दे रहे थे कि लो बॉर्न उसमें कैटेगरी में, या शायद वो बताना चाह रहे थे कि अलग अलग सोसाइटी के लोग भी कृष्णा कॉन्शियस को मतलब एक्सेप्ट कर सकते हैं चीजों के लिए कि the higher classes do not preach this. This is why the reason they have been asking for partition.
Actually, लो बॉर्न से भी लो है मुसलमान एक तरह से, जो हमारा आता है ना यवन बोलते हैं, राइट? तो you have क्षत्रिय, ब्राह्मण, क्षत्रिय, वैश्य, शूद्र, then different categories. Dog eater भी आते हैं और उसमें यवंस भी आते हैं. यवंस is like Muslims and other, everybody is there. Yeah. So, but Prabhupada's point was there, if you read carefully, वहाँ पे Prabhupada ये बोल रहे थे कि instead of separating them, उनको अगर हम Krishna conscious preach करते, they could have been also elevated to a higher conscious.
Right. But मेरा क्वेश्चन यही आ जाता है ना कि हम मतलब प्रीच कैसे करेंगे, क्योंकि at the end we can tell them the science of soul, but the end result of teaching that particular knowledge is to surrender to the Lord, which is in the case is Krishna. लेकिन हम उन्हें सोल की हम नॉलेज भी दे देंगे, लेकिन they cannot accept that ultimate God कि जिसमें they have to surrender. तो यहाँ कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग रह जाता है ना कि अगर हम लो बॉर्न जैसे हम और भी कास्ट को प्रीच करते हैं तो हम उन्हें साइंस तो बता देंगे कि दिस हाउ सोल वर्क्स बिकॉज दिस इज द साइंटिफिक वे व्हिच इज गिवन इन आवर वैदिक नॉलेज, बट द एंड रिजल्ट ऑफ दैट नॉलेज इज टू सरेंडर गॉड, राइट? तो
No, we don't have to worry about the end result. We just have to tell about the process, and the outcome is automatic.
नहीं, ट्रू, लेकिन इवन इन टीचिंग दैट कि अल्टीमेटली द क्रिश्चियन जो कैथोलिक थे जो भी प्रभुपाद के मिशन से जुड़े, दे ऑल एक्सेप्ट द एंड वर्जन, उनका यही एंड वर्डिक्ट यही रहा ना कि दे हैव जॉइन्ड द मिशन एंड दे आर प्रीचिंग अबाउट कृष्णा कॉन्शियसनेस. लेकिन इस केस में तो लेकिन हम इस केस में जब हम उन्हें प्रीच करने जाते हैं तो उनका पहले कॉन्फ्लिक्ट आता है कि व्हाई यू आर टेलिंग your God is this only supreme person.
No, then we are telling the wrong way, right? So that's we have to modify our preaching method. We have to tell them about God conscious. Prabhupada did not force anybody, right? In the conversation also we had, right? We are talking about loving. Even if you're a Christian, love Jesus, or if you are a Muslim, love Allah, or whatever your faith is, right? So that boils down to the how you preach, right? So it's
that is
about
not
the process.
That is not the fight कि आपका वर्डिक्ट क्या है, बट फर्स्ट स्टार्ट लविंग गॉड. मतलब प्रभुपाद ये डायरेक्ट करना चाह रहे हैं कि फर्स्ट स्टार्ट लविंग गॉड एंड देन चूज व्हाटएवर यू वांट टू चूज. either he can be a Jesus or he can be Allah or he can be Krishna in this case, but start the process. यही मतलब प्रभुपाद डायरेक्ट करना चाह रहे हैं इसमें.
Yes, but at the same time Prabhupada intelligently also telling, right, certain things like no meat eating, no intoxication. So he's also challenging, agar ye sari cheezein aap kar rahe hain, you cannot love the God. So got it?
इसमें लेकिन थोड़ा सा है, मैं बाद में आपसे डिस्कस करूंगा. इसमें थोड़ा सा मुझे भी इसमें डाउट होता है कि मतलब एक्चुअल फिर हमें मतलब क्या स्टेप लेना चाहिए कि हाउ टू एक्चुअली tell someone about
the
this.
first thing is to love God, right? Whatever the meditation practice you are following, if you are connected to ISKCON, let's say the process is chanting Hare Krishna mantra, meditating on chanting on the beats, sincerely reading and listening, like that, things like that. If you are a Christian, they do chanting on what is they call rosemary, right? And then reading Bible. So all different faiths. That is the first step. Then you go to the next step, right? अगर कोई lower born है, पहले उसको थोड़ा सा उठाओगे आप, right? Before you give him the advanced knowledge. So you don't give them the PhD knowledge until they have first basic knowledge.
That is what happening. कि मैं आप समझ पा रहा हूँ कि प्रभुपाद बताना चाह रहे हैं कि तुम्हारी बुक्स में भी वही दिया है जो हमारे लिटरेचर में दिया हुआ है, but you are not, you are manipulating that and then you can follow. जैसे मेरे को याद आ रहा है वो एग्जांपल प्रभुपाद बता रहे थे बाइबल का, there is written that thou shall not kill, but still the English man is opening slaughterhouse and they are running the business over there. तो हाँ, मतलब प्रभुपाद यही डायरेक्ट करना चाह रहे हैं कि एटलीस्ट फॉलो व्हाट इज गिवन इन योर लिटरेचर, राइट? मतलब मैं सही जा रहा हूँ ना?
But one thing, yes, your observation is right, exactly. But one thing I want to mention for anybody for preaching, when we are trying to preach or tell anybody, it is all about not just knowledge, it's about the purity. So Prabhupada was a pure devotee of the Lord, 100% pure. Like similarly, the other devotees or brahmacharis in the temple we meet. So based on how much sadhana they have done, how much they, depending upon their depth of sadhana, their purity comes, their influence comes on other people. So if you talk to me, my influence is different, and if you talk to Ashwin Prabhu, his influence is different, and maybe if you talk to Venu Govind Prabhu or I mean, if you know another devotee name, for example, Gauranga Prabhu or Gaur Gopal Prabhu, or then you talk to His Holiness Radha Govind Maharaj or His Holiness Radhanand Maharaj, right? Everybody has a different level of purity and their impact and influence is so different, right? Some people just become devotees by listening their lecture or seeing their video on YouTube and they get inspired and they start coming to the temple, right? So how much strong sadhana is, we don't have to worry about outcome. We just have to worry about our own sadhana. Our sadhana is strong, our preaching will automatically, preaching is the outcome. It all boils down to our own strong sadhana.
लेकिन इसमें भी बहुत सारे कॉन्ट्रडिक्शंस आते हैं मेरे दिमाग में. मैं आपसे कभी आगे बात करूंगा भी, it will take a lot of time, but still I'm getting what you are saying कि you have to focus on the purity side rather preaching कि end result क्या होगा उसका, कि first we have to take the baby
we
step.
only have to focus on our own sadhana, that's all.
Right.
Nothing else.
Right.
And anybody wants to make any comment, please feel free. Okay, I think we are out of time. Yes, go ahead, Prabhuji.
बस वही, हाँ, मतलब मेरे को एक चीज वो लगती है कि प्रभुपाद ने इतना इम्पैक्ट इसलिए क्रिएट करा कि बिकॉज देयर वाज प्योरिटी, और हमारा मूवमेंट भी इतना स्प्रेड कर रहा है कि वो उसमें प्योरिटी है. तो कहीं ना कहीं जब हम कंसिस्टेंट रहते हैं तो सामने वाला ऑब्जर्व करता है और इस चीज का इम्पैक्ट भी आता है. इट टेक्स टाइम. तो प्रभुपाद कहते हैं ना, इट रिक्वायर्स गैलन्स ऑफ ब्लड टू मेक वन पर्सन अ डिवोटी. तो वो
yes, and
बहाना पड़ेगा.
प्रभुपाद ने, आपको पता है कि I don't know, before he left for United States, he meditated in Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan for 10 years, right? Yes. In front of Rupa Goswami Samadhi. He used to cry and chant and write Srimad Bhagavatam. So, and even before that, he was doing tapasya for 40 years. But then those 10 years was especially dedicated. He got into sannyasa order, right? He took sannyas and just doing sadhana and sadhana, meditation. So your purity influence others, nothing else. I can be a good speaker, I could be an excellent orator, I can be a rich person at the X, whatever you can imagine. What influence other is your purity, or sorry, the behavior, and the behavior, your behavior will reflect through your purity.
गोस्वामीज भी थे, वो उनका भी आता ना कि वो लोग आचरण से ज्यादा मतलब प्रीचिंग करे अपने, उनका जो आचरण था उनसे ज्यादा लोग.
Exactly. All right, I guess we can stop here.
Yes.
Sorry, Prabhuji, we deviated a little bit, but it was good discussion. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Thank you. Okay.
Vanchakal patarubhasha kripa sindhuve vacha patitanam pavnevayo vaishnavayo namo namah.
Jai.
Jai.
Thank you for joining. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining.